All right, here's a joke. What's the difference between you and a robot? I'm actually not going to spoil the punchline yet, but maybe you'll know my answer by the time I'm done. My fascination with AI and the brain started from my own introspection and the inspection of other people. Why do I do what I do? Why did he do that to me? Why didn't she tell me? These are the kind of questions we ask ourselves all the time, especially when things don't go our way. And looking internally too, who am I really? Not who do I show, but what are my motivations, my goals? What makes me tick? I've been fascinated with this line of thinking for as long as I can remember, going all the way back to that bully Eli in elementary school and to my first boss and why he never did give me that raise, and to my first relationships and how my own irrational behavior didn't make a lick of sense. I would obsessively ask myself, why? It was so bad that in second grade, I was even given a quota by my teacher of how many why questions I was allowed to ask per day. It was 3. Of course, to which I responded, Mrs. Davis, why? Okay, I was in second grade, teacher, okay, and then something happened, yes, okay. So on my 14th birthday, my dad got me my first very own computer. And for the first time, I had at my fingertips this complex, many-layered system that I could ask why. Why did it get this virus? And why do these StarCraft AI enemies always beat me? And what was really cool is if I poked and prodded at it long enough, I could start to answer the questions of why. It didn't take long before I found a love for programming where I didn't have to stop at asking why, and I could go one step further and start to build something. At my first attempt at college, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to make AI for video games. I was going to build these agents that move around in a digital world and have complex behaviors that would make other people ask why. But there was something about AI in video games that lacked this depth of complexity that it seemed humans had. And it also was missing a connection to what was important to me, which was understanding the brain. Over the years, I navigated in and out of various academic and career paths. And as life happened to me, as it does, I started to see this pattern, that no matter what I did or what other people did, if I sat and thought long and hard enough about it, I could usually come up with a hypothesis as to why. So let me give some examples. Why did I let them talk over me instead of speaking up? Well, I have low self-confidence, and I seem to think that whoever they are, they must have more clout than I do. Well, but why? And then I think back to my childhood and how he told me it was my fault. My brain had been reinforced that what I wanted was damaging, and of course that skewed my perspective. And this kind of thinking extends to less somber things also. Like, why did I feel like binging on Taco Bell today? Well, I had a stressful day, and I'm upset because the world doesn't match my moral views, and this bothers me. But why so much? Well, it suggests that I don't fit into society and that I need that social inclusion. So instead, I seek the alternative and go for that dopamine fix from my favorite fat and carbon-fused foods. One of my favorite lines of thinking is to think about all the things that we do because of the human need to procreate. It's totally crazy. Like, why did you move into that nice new apartment? Was your health really at risk because of your old shaggy carpet and those 1970s earth-toned countertops? No, of course not. So why? Well, we get nice places to live so that we can increase our social status. We want to build up our nest and then fill it with pretty feathers and tinsel and straw and bedding. When you start to apply this line of thinking to everything that you do, it's humbling. I realize I am a byproduct of the motivations of my mind. So, like programming, if we can understand the reasons why we do things, could we also reconstruct them? Could we build something that has similar driving motivations? And if we can, is it possible that it could exhibit some of these complex behaviors that seem almost irrational at times? In AI, there's this concept called an objective function. It's a formula for determining what it is you want your AI to do. Just like humans have our core needs, food, shelter, social inclusion, the AIs that we interact with have their needs, their, dare I say, motivations. Siri wants to give you the best answer possible. Netflix wants to give you a recommendation that you're going to enjoy. The Mars rover wants to give us back as much data about the planet as possible. When you start to look at AI from this perspective, it looks strikingly like a brain. They have these motivations, and they interact with the world, and they perceive it, and they even modify themselves to achieve them. And AIs can even do some irrational stuff. There's this funny case in the AI literature of an agent that was supposed to learn how to win at a racing game. And because of the objective function, it would drive around, and it learned that it could get points from running over these coins. And over time, it completely stopped worrying about the race, and it would just run around on the track getting as many coins as possible like a madman. It sounds a little bit like a midlife crisis to me. So seeing this connection between the brain and AI has compelled me to explore the intersection of these fields. How can we take the complicated and beautiful machinery of the brain and build more interesting AI? And how can we take AI and use it to help the messy world of brain science? Luckily, it turns out there's a lot of ways. Neuroscience has a tremendous need for tools that help us interrogate the function and dysfunction of the brain. In my research, I use AI to design viruses that deliver therapies to the brain. In this case, the AI's objective function is getting the most effective therapy to those neurons that need it the most, in like Alzheimer's disease. I also draw inspiration from the brain to add tricks to AI methods. Just a few days ago, my friend and I were sorting tea leaves, which sounds like an odd pastime, but we were taking notes on what it is that our brain was doing during this process, and we found that it does something a little bit different than many modern AI systems, which is, instead of just looking at the big picture, our brain focuses on these subtle details of the tea leaves that uniquely inform us about the task that we want to do. I can then take an algorithm take the brain, I mix those words up, take the brain and apply it to an algorithm, for example, studying the differences between subtle differences in Alzheimer's versus healthy patient brains. It's amazing the amount of things that these two fields can borrow from each other. And every week, I'm surprised by something that one of my algorithms or someone else's does. And I more and more frequently find myself looking at the output of an algorithm and asking why. Someday, I think we'll look at our AIs and realize that they're as complex and beautiful as we are. And maybe someday they'll look at us and also start to ask the question, why?